You're listening to the TruMission Podcast. We believe that in Christ, you have the power to step into the life you were made for. On this podcast, we give you the tools and resources you need to live out God's purpose for your life, your true mission. Well, welcome to another edition of the TruMission Podcast. We're so glad you joined us today.
Hey, yeah, good to be with you.
It's good to be here. Hey, I've been working this week on getting our kids registered for school, and every time I mention the word school, they're like, no.
It's coming soon.
But it's coming in a month, and the parents are excited, and the kids are just enjoying the summer.
You've also been working on my editing my book. You just finished editing
it's a
my book that we're about to make available to everyone in the coming weeks. It'll be available. I believe we're going to have it on our website. It'll be free for digital copy download, and we'll also have other copies that will be given out in crusades and missionary works that we're doing around the nation and around the world. So that's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's exciting. I just read through and edited it, and there's something about reading the story, your story of salvation, but hearing the stories of our brothers and sisters in Christ, bringing us back to that moment of salvation, inspires faith to believe for what we're talking about today, reckless obedience, to say yes to the will of God, no matter how we feel, no matter what it looks like, to do that bold obedience.
I know. I was thinking of the theme verse for today's show is found in James chapter 1 and verse 22. It says, James is writing. I love how James writes because, he is like spot on. James does not pull any punches. He hits it straight on. He says, but don't just listen to God's word. You must do what it says. Otherwise, you're only fooling yourselves.
Yeah. Hey, didn't you just, you did an interview recently with Pastor Tyler. Here he's about to start a church plant, and how'd that go?
Yeah, so it went great. In fact, that's what we're gonna be jumping right into here in a second. So let's,
awesome.
Without further ado, let's just jump right into that. All right. Well, hey, good to have you, Pastor Tyler Everett.
Thank you for having me.
We've known each other for a while. We were pre-kids, pre-marriage. We've known each other for quite some time, man. Worked at R.W. Shambox. That's where we met. Your dad was my pastor. So
much has changed in those many undisclosed number of years. So much has changed.
You just moved from Houston up to the Dallas area. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there. You're planning a church.
Yeah, so there really has. There's been so much that's changed since we met. We had some crazy stories growing up, didn't we? But so kind of spiritually matured, but also just in personal growth, something about having wife and kids and everything like that just kind of pushes you to that place where it's like, okay, you got to put some of the craziness behind, but I think we still have a little bit of that at heart.
It's the kids. When you get the kids, you're like, you know what, I got to grow up now. Somebody's got to be adult.
But you get respect though. Something about keeping other people alive beyond yourself, like gives you a little street credit there. So that street credit has led us to the place where we're, stepping out, and the Lord had spoke really clearly to Lauren and I both about moving from a worship pastor focus to a senior pastor focus in 2017, and gave us some clear directions, some simple steps of you need to go and get back into Bible college. So I had finished a full degree from Christ for the Nations in Dallas, and then went back to school again with an emphasis on theology, and so completed that in 2020 and started this pursuit of God. We know that you want us to launch a church. The question is where. And so kind of took 2020 just to pray and to seek. And towards the end of that year, God had really placed Prosper, Texas, kind of the northern part of North Dallas, on our hearts. And so that journey kind of unfolded a lot faster than what we realized it was going to unfold. He talked to us about that. Like I said, it was probably mid to late November. And I talked to my senior pastor in January. And May 1st, we were actually up there in the Dallas area. And so that's just kind of got us started. And that's where we are now. We're going to be launching August 22nd. Which is a lot faster than most of these guys tell you to do it. But again, there's just been a lot of simple obedience to God. Like we went and we did all the research on the front end, and looked at the great church planning models, and they say, hey, don't do this. And then we sit there and we take it before God and say, okay, God, we have this plan. What do you think about that? And more times than not, he just kept changing little things here and there. And it's just been a great journey.
And it's called, it's going to be called The Gathering.
The Gathering.
The Gathering. And we can find your website at
wethegathering.com.
Wethegathering.com. And that's August, when was August?
August 22nd. That's
August
an important
22nd.
one.
That's important for me because Pastor Tyler is my pastor now.
Come
on. My son loves it because you're a big Lego fan. My son's a big Lego fan. And He's like, I love my new pastor. He's a Lego fan. And I was like, well, your old pastor was kind of a good guy too. I was his Oh yeah. I like the old guy too.
He was good. We were actually talking about Legos before we started this broadcast just a second ago. He was telling me about some of his struggles with some of what he's putting together right now. So.
Well, one of the reasons I got you on is because we're talking about bold obedience. We're talking about the pursuit of God and what happens when we chase after God. Now, it's interesting to me because this is just a side story. Before we get into the heart of this, and part of the reason why I wanted to have you on to talk about bold obedience. But so we're at Shambox, all right? So we're rewind the clock. This is back in the day. We're at RW Shambox. You are leading worship at that time, okay? I'm an associate pastor on staff, and I don't know if you remember, but back in the day, we would sit up on the stage. You remember that in the big,
on the big chairs,
big leather chairs. We sit up on the stage,
Goodness gracious! And
of course, we were all, decked out with suits and leather-soled shoes, and that's an important part of the story.
Yeah.
But you know me, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to to expression. Not that I have anything against expression. It's just I'm just pretty chill. This particular Sunday, you're leading worship, and God just hit me hard, man. Just like boom, boom, boom. Just dealing with some things in my life, and so I'm on stage again, associate pastor up there in one of the leather chairs, sitting up there, and during worship, I hear God say, God speak to my heart and say, I'm not saying audible voice, but speak to my heart, and He said, won't you run for me?
Oh, come on.
And I was like, no. No. I'm not gonna run.
Yeah.
And so worship kept going on, and then God was like, I want you to run for me. And I said, no. And then God was like there's a breakthrough in the motion of just taking off for me.
Come on, brother.
And so I sat there. I'm not sat there. I was standing. I wasn't in complete.
You're not allowed to sit at
disobedience.
That's
I was
right.
standing, and still having this internal argument going on with God. Like, no, I don't want to do that. So I want the breakthrough, but can we get it another way? All right. So God wasn't leaving me alone, which is kind of funny to me. Like, God, come on, leave me alone. I'm trying to worship.
Get back in my religion.
So then I heard in Bible school that fleecing God is a terrible thing to do.
Yep.
That getting answer to prayer by fleecing God typically doesn't work, and you shouldn't do it. So I thought to myself, all right, I'll fleece God. So I said, God, if you want me to run, make Tyler run.
Come on.
Now, you had your in-ears in. So you had in-ears in, and you're plugged into to everything.
Because I played keyboard. This wasn't like acoustic guitar.
Right.
If you're acoustic, that's a little bit easier.
So you're over there, and you're playing keys. You're all hooked up, and then you're worshiping, and out of nowhere you go, yeah, okay, all right. And then you start taking the in-ears out. So I'm watching you, and so you're having, okay, all right. And so you're talking in the mic, and then you take the in-ears out, you pop off the microphone, and you take off running.
I remember
And so you jump off stage. You take off running,
Dude.
and then I go, dang it.
I do remember this.
So then I was like, well, I mean, it worked. So I jump off stage to go run. And as soon as I get off the stage to run, like I'm like full speed, those leather sole shoes I had catch the carpet, slip, and I fall into some chairs. And I'm laid out on the floor. And so now I'm laid out on the floor, and I'm going, are you kidding me? And then I kid you not, the Holy Spirit said to me, next time when I say run at the first, run at the first.
Come on.
so I'm laying there, and I'm laughing because I'm just like, I can't, the delayed reaction. But at the same time, there was an incredible, laying there on the floor, there was an incredible breakthrough that God did in my life. And I'll never forget that, because I said, well, if Tyler will do it, and just in middle of a song, you say over the mic, okay, all right, and then and I was like, what's going on? Yeah. So again, talking about the bold obedience,
that's good.
Moving to, because you're not just talking about moving, down the road. I mean, the state of Texas is huge. So moving from Houston to Dallas, that's a big move. Yeah. But we're not just talking about moving from Houston to Dallas to take another worship pastor position. Yeah. Like, we're talking, this is a complete career change, I guess, if I had to put in air quotes. Yeah. I mean, you're going from what you have known into the unknown.
Absolutely.
Just talk to us a little bit about how God worked in your heart on that transition from, I know this, I'm comfortable, and I think that's where we all find ourselves in doing things for God. We get comfortable, but then God steps in and says, okay, you know how you've been worship pastor and how you invested all that time in being a worship pastor? Let's do something different. So talk to us a little bit about that.
So just touching that word comfortable there, that should basically become the 4-letter word of our faith. When you find yourself in a place of just overly comfortable, I find that I always need to just kind of put myself in check a little bit. Like, why am I so comfortable? You shouldn't just be stressed and, on medication constantly because you're just living in anxiety. That's not the point. But just the comfortableness that brings you to that place where you say, I got this. God, you can do something. You're welcome to do it if you want to do it. But to be honest, you might not say it out loud, but you think to yourself, I got this. Even if he doesn't move, I could still, because like I said, I mean, you and I both, we've been in ministry for a long time now. And especially in the area of worship, it sounds awful, but I knew how to play the game. Like I said, I knew how to facilitate a move of the Spirit, which was awesome. That's what God had called me to at the age of 11. I want you to lead people into my presence. And so I was, that was my passion. That was my heart. I feel like, I was really in God's will as we were doing those things. But it was almost like, God, if you didn't move, I could still work it if I had to. And that was a scary place for us. And so when he spoke in 2017 about looking at senior pastorate, first of all, I had no desire to do that whatsoever, because I didn't understand. We might both be in the church, but there's a drastic difference between worship pastor versus senior pastor, just the responsibility and the focus. I mean, I had to start dealing with people like on a real level. It was one thing to deal with, just the emotional musicians and singers, but it was a whole nother level when you're talking about the full spread of diversity that you experience as a pastoral role. And I had seen that in my father and just different guys that I had served underneath, and I just thought that is not appealing whatsoever. But nonetheless, we knew that God was calling us to make that transition. And almost I want to just kind of talk about that, your little crazy running story there with Shambach. To be honest, what brought us to the place where we felt comfortable saying yes to making this big change, it didn't start with saying yes to the big changes. It started with little bitty changes.
That's good.
And sometimes the big change almost felt easier when you finally got to that place where you got to make that big change, because it was like God just wasn't quiet about this thing. It wasn't like, well, I think, maybe it was bad pizza, maybe it was this or that. It was like, no, I knew for a fact this is what God was calling us to do. It was just a matter of, was I willing to give him my yes? But what brought me to that place was honestly those little bitty yeses, day-to-day yeses. Will you go say something to this person? Will you not say this to your wife? Which most of the time that's where I miss it. It's just like that Holy Spirit unction where he just says, don't bring that up to her. And now I got this, I'm going to do it now. And then she, just causes drama for the rest of the day. But it was learning to say yes through the little bitty things of life brought us to that place where honestly, this wasn't just, like you said, it wasn't just moving from one worship pastor position to the next. I mean, we joke because right now we move from a really nice salary with full-time health benefits, which like we talked about, with kids and stuff like that becomes a big deal. Like you want to make sure that your kids are taken care of and all that kind of stuff. We move from all like these great things. Our senior pastor did not want us to leave. They were opening up some awesome doors for us there in Houston. And so it wasn't a situation where we were in like a frustrated state with our church. We love that church. We still stay in contact with them often. It was just moving because God had said it's time to go. And we moved from that to total unemployment to an area where we knew nobody and just trusted that God, if you've called us to do this, that you're going to make the provision, you're going to open up the doors, and you're going to connect us with the right people. But yeah, so it was a total faith step, but I don't believe we would have made that step had we not learned to say yes in the little things first so that we were open to making those transitions into the bigger steps.
That's good stuff. I love that, being faithful in the small things, and we discount that too. There was a guy that came to Brother Shambach's church, and I cannot remember his name. I know he pastored a large church in a real small community.
Oh yeah.
I remember him talking about operating in the prophetic. Was his name Peter something or other? I can't remember. Anyways, he was talking about operating in the prophetic. He said, we get so scared about stepping out to speak into somebody's life because we're afraid, well, what if we miss it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because we're so afraid of what if we miss it, we never do it.
Yeah.
His challenge to us all was step out and just be bold.
Right.
And if you miss it, you can work with that. Mm-hmm. But it's better to have stepped out and tried and then regroup than to have never obeyed God and stepped out. I remember years ago, I was on my way to a pastor's conference in Lancaster, PA, and we were about, a few hours out from Lancaster, and pulled over at a gas station. And it was like a gas station, huge place. Like it had a Starbucks in there. It had like a Burger King. It had me in a lot of restaurants. So it was like a rest stop and gas station. So Marty's getting the kids something to eat at one of the, McDonald's, something like that. And again, it's all one big room where all these shops are, almost like a mall. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go over and get us some Starbucks. And so I was standing in line to get Starbucks. Marty took the kids to go get some Happy Meals. And I'm standing in line, and I hear this girl who comes over and says, "Pastor?" And so I turn around, and I didn't recognize her.
Yeah.
And I said, yes. And she said, I got something for you when you get done. And so I said, okay. And so now I'm going through the line. I'm thinking, man, now you're going to have these moments. I mean, you've had these moments as worship pastor, I'm sure, but as senior pastor, you're going to have a lot of these moments where the sheer panic falls upon you when somebody knows you, but you cannot place them. It's not like, there's sometimes like I can remember the face, but I can't remember the name. I'm not having one of those moments. I'm having like, I don't know you at type moment. And so I'm going like, oh man, oh God, who is this person? I have no point of reference. Usually I have somebody with me that, that I can go like,
that's why we get married.
Quickly, Facebook them,
That's right. You need that sidekick.
None of that.
That's right.
So I'm going through line and get our coffees. And then now I meet up with Marty. And I said, this girl is wanting to pray with us, want to talk to us. And Marty's like, do we know her? I said, I think so. She came in line and she said, Pastor, we get together now. It's Marty, myself, our two kids, and we're going through a rough moment in life during this time. And she just begins to prophesy.
Come on.
She prophesies over me. She prophesies over Marty. She prophesies over our kids. I mean, just spot on. And so then Marty asked her the questions like, how do we know you?
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, man, don't ask that question.
Okay.
Like,
Tell me that's why we get married.
So the lady said, oh, I don't know you. And then now I was like, what? And so I said, but you said pastor. And she said, that's the funniest thing. She said, I was sitting there about to eat my sandwich. And she said, as I was about to take a bite, the Holy Spirit told me, go over to the Starbucks line and say pastor. And when you say pastor, a pastor in line is going to turn around, and I'm going to give you a word for him and his family when they get out of line.
Come on.
And I thought to myself, now that's bold obedience.
That is bold obedience.
That's bold, like in the middle of everything, to be able to stop, put down your sandwich and say, okay, and just walk over to a line and say, pastor, and then somebody turns around and says yes. And what it took to do that, the obedience in just following those small unctions of the Spirit as the Spirit prompts, hey, go do this. Right. And it's amazing to me is because he doesn't give you everything. I know what it's like to step out and prophesy. I've never, ever stepped out to give a word to somebody where God has given me everything for that person right at the beginning. Yeah. It's typically one word. That's it. And then he kind of follows along as you step out in obedience, which is incredibly terrifying. Absolutely. Incredibly terrifying because it's like, wait a minute, all I get is this one piece of this puzzle. Yeah. And that kind of segue into one of the points I wanted to kind of point out today when it comes to obedience is that at the front end, to understand that bold obedience usually triggers opposition. Absolutely. That opposition, it can be an outward opposition. People come out of the woodworks to oppose you. Mm-hmm. It's definitely a spiritual opposition. Yep. And sometimes it's an internal opposition. The internal clock or the internal monologue is going off and it's saying, yeah, you walk over to Starbucks and you say pastor, and then everybody's going to turn around and look at you and go, what an idiot, Yeah. I mean, so you have this, wherever that opposition is coming from, nonetheless, it's opposition. So I don't know. Can you talk a little bit about that when it comes to obedience? Maybe as it applies to stepping out with the church, or just in your life, those moments where you've had to overcome the opposition, whether again outside source or internal source. Yeah, I got to tell you. All right, so opposition, you nailed it right on the head. At least for me personally, the greatest opposition that I face on a daily basis.
Nothing brings us more joy than being part of the journey of helping others discover their purpose and their true mission in life. It's the generous support of our partners that make it possible for us to carry out the mission of reaching the world with the hope of Jesus, where we all find our true mission. If you would like to help support this ministry or become a TruMission partner, simply text the word GIVE to 903-343-1350 or visit our website at TruMission.com.
Well, this message that we're hearing from Pastor Tyler in discussing stepping out in bold obedience, man, it is inspiring me to really evaluate what is the last thing I've heard from the Lord, and have I obeyed?
I know. And, when we were going through the interview with him, I was sharing with him the story, and he's the first one that came to mind when I thought about obedience, because of that very scene that I talked about in our interview, where I'm running off the stage and falling into a bunch of chairs, and God is speaking to me saying, "You should have went when I told you to run." And it really is bold obedience. What it brings about in our life. Because, really, God is looking for us to trust Him at His word.
Yeah.
to step out by faith. And we're going to get into some more of that here in just a second as we get deeper into our conversation. In fact, I want to just jump right at it. So we'll get right back to our my conversation with Pastor Tyler Everett. One of the points I wanted to kind of point out today when it comes to obedience is that at the front end, to understand that bold obedience usually triggers opposition.
Yeah, I got to tell you. All right, so opposition, you nailed it right on the head. At least for me personally, the greatest opposition that I face on a daily basis is that inward opposition. Because, I mean, honestly, right now, I've gotten like one ugly Facebook message so far, from somebody just saying some junk. But other than that, we've had a lot of people in our corner just celebrating us, or just being neutral on it. I'll even take silence sometimes, just being quiet. I'll take that too. But the internal opposition, it's typically that first voice that you hear is God. And then not too long after, it's going to be, we sometimes want to blame it on the devil, but I think the devil has most of us on autopilot. Like we can take care of most of the self-hate and everything like that.
It's like that scene on Liar Liar when he's in the bathroom and he's beating himself. Jim Carrey is beating himself against the wall, and the guy walks in and says, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm kicking my own tail."
That's right. That's it. Most of the time I don't need the devil. I don't need my wife to do it. Like I can work it all up on my own. So overcoming that inner voice that just says, have you thought about just the reality of what you're thinking about doing here, like the practical elements of it? And I think that's part of our deal, is that we want to rationalize it, and we can say in rational ways that there's no way that this is actually what God is calling you to do. But you hit it right. Like, I don't believe, at least not for, I have never experienced, let me say it this way, I've never experienced in my own life personally where God has laid out the full map in front of me. And I think there's intentionality behind that, because if I understand the whole path, then it places less reliance on God and more reliance on myself. And I really believe that in our lives, God is less interested in the destination as he is the journey.
Oh, that's good.
Because it's in the journey that we really do build up that history and that faith with God. If again, you hear pastors say this all the time. If salvation was just about getting you to heaven, then the moment that you gave your heart to the Lord, he'd just kill you right there on the spot, and you're up there, and it's like, all right, good to go. But no, you make that decision to follow Christ. He reveals himself to you. Say yes, Lord, to him, and you start on this journey. And it's really that's the whole deal. Honestly, for Lauren and I, one of the things that we talk about is just maybe the challenge is not to get overly frustrated in this journey. Like, we're excited about August 22nd. We're excited about, getting to actually get into weekly services with our family and our friends and these people that we're connecting with in the community. But trying to just slow down long enough to just enjoy today and say, what do we need to do today? What is God challenging us to do today? Because we know that the obstacles that we overcome, giving God that daily yes, is going to help us. And honestly, like, the journey's not going to end. So you think, like, you build all this hype up to this one, to this one day or this one season, and you get there and it's kind of like, all right, like what's the next thing? And for some of us, when we kind of move God out of that equation, I encounter people now where they had this life goal of like, man, I just want to do this. And they finally get a hold of it, and it's a little underwhelming. And it's like, you didn't enjoy that journey. You didn't enjoy that process of just being obedient in the little things and seeing God, show up in the small things, and understanding that there's grace there, like you said, just to totally screw up. Man, I've missed it a million times. But at the same time, I really do. I believe that I didn't miss it because God wasn't clear on what he wanted me to do. I missed it because there was that internal voice that kind of pushed me away and said, you know what, let's not go all the way with it. Let's kind of give it maybe a half of a try or something. Like you said, you end up falling into the chairs. If you, it's like you did it, but man, you learned a harder lesson than what you needed to learn in that process.
Now, how do you combat? I mean, obviously there's probably lots of different ways, but what's some of the tools that you use to combat that voice?
I'll give you a practical, and then I'll give you the spiritual one.
Oh, I love that. That right there is so pastoral, what you just did.
I'll give you because we always try to jump towards the spiritual one. Brother, you just pray. You just pray before the Lord. All right, so how do you combat the internal voice? On a practical thing, I just have to calm myself down. first and foremost, because a lot of times I can get myself so hyped up and anxious that the last thing I'm capable of doing is hearing the voice of the Lord. It's not that he's not speaking. It's just my ability to interpret what's being said there is so far gone. So I just got to relax. And so honestly, it could be a myriad of different things, but I have to have a couple triggers that I just know this calms me down. Sometimes it's a drive. Sometimes it's a movie. Even at the age of 36, I still love a good video game. And there will be something inside of me that says, you don't have time for that. And that something would be right in a lot of instances. But if I know that I'm just at that place where God's speaking and I can't relax. I got to go hit the gym. I got to go do something to just, first of all, just in a very practical way, I got to relax. I got to chill out. So calm myself down. And then in that process, I'll find a place where I can connect with God. And then the only thing I can do at that point is just start reminding myself of the promises and the history that I've had with God. It's one thing to be able to quote the scriptures and stuff, but like I said, it's those little steps of obedience. I'll go back and look. A perfect example is I am petrified when I think about the location that we've gotten for this church. It is not the location that I wanted in any way, shape, or form. But like whenever God speaks to you, I don't know how it is for you, but when he speaks and I know it's God speaking, it's like he takes a photo of where I was in that moment when he spoke, and he just kind of puts it in my brain, and I don't have to write it down. I don't have to go back and journal it. I can always go back to that picture in my mind. So the location that we're at, we had like a perfect school location. It was in a brand new area. The school was beautiful, the neighborhoods and everything like that. Again, if you go back to strategic church planning, it was everything that we ever wanted. So that was the easy yes to God, even though I didn't really consult him on the location. It just seemed like, hey, you know what? You gave me a brain. This is practical. This looks like a great spot. So we chose that. We did the contract and we were moving forward with it. We put it on expensive promotional materials that now we have to kind of like Sharpie over, like, oh, just kidding. We're not using that one. That kind of thing definitely happened. And I'll never forget, I'm sitting in a time of worship, and I wasn't even thinking about our location. That was already like that box had been checked, and Holy Spirit brought that back to me and said, that's not this place that I want you to go. And I was like, nah, you crazy. Like, that's not, again, it was the God voice and it was the practical voice. And when he told me the school that we were supposed to go launch in, it was ugly. It was old. The flow of traffic was so bad that the lady that was showing us around, she got lost to the point where she had to go find a janitor and say, where's the cafeteria in this place? Like, I can't find it. Again, brand new schools. It's like main entrance. You walk in, cafeteria to the left, gym on the right. Like, everything's just, it makes sense. I don't know who, like, it looked like a Tim Burton school or something like that. The layout of it was like a maze. It was crazy. But he said, I want you to go there because there's a well that needs to be dug. And I got to tell you, there was a lot of anxiety that came out of that. And I really do believe that it was a spiritual thing more than anything, because I shouldn't have been as stressed out about that location as what I was. But in a very practical way, I first processed it with Lauren, with my wife. And then I just had to go walk around that school for a while, and even called up the lady that organizes everything and said, I need to walk through this school. I don't know if it's going to be okay that we change our contract, but this needs to be done. And so she let me walk around. We spent about an hour there. And I'm not the type of guy that cries. It annoys some people that I don't cry. But I'm telling you what, it was like fighting back tears the entire time we moved to that school, because God's presence was there. We started talking to that director and found out that there was a church that was in that school during COVID that closed down. Like, one Sunday they were there, the next Sunday they were gone. Didn't give anybody a heads up or anything. Like, literally just dipped. And God had spoken to me when during that time of worship. He said there was a well that needed to be redug. If I wouldn't have calmed down and just, like I said, in a very practical way, processed out loud with some friends, and then just took it before the Lord and said, God, if you want this, then, you have my yes. I don't understand it. And he worked everything out for good, but it was like little bitty steps of obedience. And it was just a location. I mean, we look at it and we say, we're the church. It doesn't matter. It's just a building kind of thing. But I believe that there's provision in the location that God's, called you to. And so although that location in the natural is so weird, we believe that spiritually we have authority over that area in ways that we would never have in those other locations. So just being obedient, and sometimes just overcoming that inner voice to say, you know what, it might not make sense in the natural, but you gotta give God that yes.
Well, I think, and this kind of brings me to this next point that I wanted to make about having bold obedience when it comes to following after God, is how often our miracle is attached to obedience.
Oh, no doubt.
When you think about what we understand in hermeneutics, we'd say it's called the principle of first mention. That when you're reading the Bible, when you read something that happens and the first time it's mentioned, it'll kind of set a precedence throughout the rest of the story.
Yeah.
And so if we look at it that way, and we look at Jesus, his ministry is about to start. He's at this wedding feast in Canaan, and they ran out of wine.
Yep.
And his mom comes in, Mary comes in, and she tells Jesus, look, they ran out of wine. They need some help. And Jesus basically looks back at her and says, not my problem.
That's it.
So, and then I love it because Mary didn't even address Jesus looking back and going, look, it's what do you want me to do about it type thing. Jesus looks over at the servants.
Come on.
I mean, not Jesus. Mary looks over at the servants, and Mary says to the servants, whatever he says do it. And Jesus looks at them and he tells them, okay, well, get me some water.
Yeah.
And then he turns the water into wine. That's what we're familiar with the story. But I love how the miracle starts. The miracle starts with the words of Mary to the servants. Whatever he says do it.
That's it.
And I think that oftentimes our miracle is attached to obedience.
That's it. Yeah.
That whatever he says do it.
Do it. Yeah.
And I think that's kind of, what you're pointing out here with, you're looking at this
Ugly duckling.
the ugly duckling school.
The ugly duckling school.
And
That's
you're
their
thinking
mascot.
to yourself, wow, I had this over here.
Yeah.
And now he's telling me to do this. But the miracle is attached to that obedience. This says, okay, Lord, if this is where it is, I'll do it.
Well, and it kind of goes back to like, okay, so you have boldness, but where is that boldness rooted? And again, there is a internal struggle that we want to be strong within ourselves. And but yet the word tells us it's actually in the weakness that, Christ is made strong, and everything we're doing is here to bring him glory. So again, I think a lot of times the more strategic we are, I don't know, for good or for bad, it can be to our detriment because it pulls us to a position where we don't have to rely as much on Christ. We had heard a guy speak this past week, and he's just, he kind of, in a very snide way, said, it's amazing how much the church has done, without the help of the Holy Spirit. Just in our...
Yeah. That guy, I can't remember his name, but
it's
man.
Russell Johnson.
Russell Johnson, man.
Yeah.
Never heard him before this past Sunday, but wow.
That was, he was wild. The Pursuit Northwest, if you guys want to check out something there, he was really amazing. But yeah, I mean, it's true. We have become really smart when it comes how to play church and how to just play Christian in life and everything like that, you and I, we've, traveled overseas to a bunch of different places, and you really realize like how in America, we really have, kind of crafted a good art of just self-care. Like we can take care of ourselves apart from Christ. If God wants to come in, that's great. If not, we got the medicine, we got the resources, we got the people group. Like the desperation from Christ needs to be restored, because a lot of times what happens is that we're bold people, but we're bold because of our personal strength. And I think really where God is bringing us on that journey is learning how to trust him. It's not that we couldn't have done church in that school further north outside of Prosper, but it was just that God had something special in that place. And in the natural, my gifts and my talents just didn't look like they would shine quite as bright in that area, but I almost see him saying, exactly, like that's the point. Trust me in this thing. Watch me do something. Let me get the glory for this. This isn't about, your glory and your fame.
And that's really what it boils down to, is that bold obedience, it will always require a step of faith.
Always.
Always a step of faith. And it really is. It's stepping out beyond self and having the space where you rely on God.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, God's glory is not going to be shared with anyone.
That's right.
So it's not like we're going to be look at God and be like, okay, I get half the credit, you get half the credit.
Fitty.
You know? No, at the end of the day, God gets all the glory. And I think, one of the running jokes I had when I was a senior pastor was that I don't know half the things that you people think I know.
Yeah.
you step out and you show up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people that have been around me that have grown up underneath my ministry have heard me say it before, that half the battle is just showing up.
It is.
And because so many won't just show up. So many won't just say, okay, I will be a vessel. I will be obedient. I will step out by faith. Half of it is just showing up. Told this story before. At one point, I took a position at a place and I was just fresh out of college, never worked in this field before, took the position, got into my office, first day of work, shut the door and thought to myself, dear God, I hope nobody finds out how much I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they'll fire me on the spot.
That's it. Yep.
But I'll tell you, most of my time as a senior pastor was showing up and going, Lord, I'm so far over my head right now. Mm-hmm. There is absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to church growth strategies, I always, I always laugh like, wow, oftentimes God led me to do church growth in the opposite direction that the book said.
Yeah.
So it's like, seriously, I could read the book and I might as well read it in reverse, because God's going to do this, do this, do this. But, the beauty that I found in all of that is being open and honest with my ignorance, to be able to say, okay, this wasn't built on brains, because I didn't have any.
Yeah.
It's all God.
Yeah.
Because, to be able to look back and go, okay, this is a step of faith that I couldn't have done it. There's no way I could. I couldn't even begin to think this up. No. But it really is. It's a step of faith. It's just stepping out and saying, okay, God, I will go where you tell me to go, even if I've never been there before.
That's it.
I will say what you tell me to say, even if I've never heard it before. Because it's a step of faith, and it's always, bold obedience always requires that step of faith that just steps out and says, okay, Lord, I really don't know, but at the end of the day, you're going to get all the credit, because I'm not going to be able to look at anybody and say, yeah, I thought all this up. Actually, I was about to, pee my pants before, like, wow, that was really, that was so courageous of you to step out and do that. Really? Because I was, I was, puking in the bathroom.
You should have seen the fetal position that I had acquired prior to stepping out.
Yeah.
That's the real thing.
Yeah. The bold obedience requiring faith.
It really does.
Before we wrap up today, a couple of things. Any final closing thoughts, and then tell everybody how we can find out more information about the gathering, what you guys are doing. Again, launch date is August 22nd, of course. Keeping that in mind. If you find yourself in the North Dallas area, check out the gathering. So give all that good information. Anything you want to add to as we kind of wrap up today?
Yeah, I would just say, if you are finding yourself in a place of just being overly comfortable, step out and just see what God has for you. That although, Ray and I both we just talked about in a very, very fun way, it's scary, but I think we'd both agree that it's the greatest journey ever. Like, you almost, we've heard it said before that once you've walked on water, you're never comfortable in a boat again.
Oh, that's good.
Isn't it? Like, that's the whole deal. I never want to get back in a boat. Like, we've moved from this place where we say, like, we're no longer just on the faith walk, we're on the faith breath. Like, the idea of just every single element of our lives right now is requiring faith. And although it'll scare you spitless, you're going to make it through. That the Bible says that the steps of the righteous, that they're ordered of God, and that He's begun a good work on you, and He's going to see it through until the end. And you're just kind of missing out. If you're in that place where you just find yourself and you're comfortable, you feel like you got it all under control, you've worked your 401k plan, you got all the little, boxes checked off in life, I would encourage you think you have it good right now, but you haven't even come close to tasting and seeing all the amazing things that God has for you. Because when you give Him that yes, and He pushes you out there beyond your comfort zone, you're going to find yourself in the fetal position sometimes. You're going to find yourself just scared spitless, where you're having to run around and do anything you can just to maintain sanity. But the journey is just, it's the best thing you could ever get yourself into. And so I would just encourage you, like, step out there, give it a shot. It's worth it. Even if you fail, that's what God's grace and mercy is there for, that He's going to pick you up. Because I've never seen a parent get angry at their kid for trying. You know, it's always, if anything, it's like, man, will you get off your butt and do something? You know, I never get angry at my kid for going out there and trying something new. And, you know, so just encourage you guys, just step out, do something bold, you know, stay accountable, and watch God do something amazing in your life, for sure.
Awesome stuff. And where can we find more information?
So more information, definitely just go to wethegathering.com. We also have a bunch of Instagram stuff and everything that if I said it out loud, you wouldn't remember. But if you get onto our website, you got the big buttons right there. You can't miss it. We have YouTubes and stuff like that. We're actually we'll get Ray and Marty up there with us shortly, so you can see some of their face. But yeah, thanks for having us up here, man. This has been great.
August 22nd, Prosper, Texas.
Prosper, Texas. After I badmouthed the school multiple times, let me give them a shout out. We're meeting over at Reynolds Middle School. You know, there are some. It is a great location. It's at the heart of Prosper, which is something that God had really spoken to us about. Some of the other areas that we had looked at were kind of like on the fringe or maybe in a different city, but we really felt Him speak specifically about Prosper, Texas, because we do believe that God is doing something supernatural in that town. So Reynolds Middle School in Prosper, Texas, August 22nd. First service is going to be at 10 a.m.
Awesome stuff. Well, again, appreciate you coming on.
Hey,
it won't be the last time.
All right.
So thanks again.
Thank you.
Man, it was ooh. My mic is loud. Let me turn me down there. Man, it was really great being able to spend some time with Pastor Tyler and getting to experience the journey again with him of some of the things that we have walked through, and to be inspired by his obedience and faith to walk out the things and plans of God despite anything that he's up against. And I don't know, it's always exciting, encouraging to me, builds me up inside when I get to hang out with guys like that.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for this interview with Pastor Tyler. And if it challenged you today to say yes to your mission, we encourage you to log on to our website at TruMission.com. Let us know about it. And hey, if you have anything that you would like us to agree with you in prayer, let us know while you're on the website as well. We love you guys. Remember, we are for you. God is for you. Keep moving forward in your assignment, your mission, because remember, you are made for more.
For more information about TruMission, visit our website at TruMission.com. That is TRUMission.com. You can also check out our messages on our YouTube channel, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Your True Mission. Thanks again. You've been listening to the TruMission Podcast.